Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Coffee with Convery. Today, we have the inspiring Sohaib Zekry joining us. 7 years ago, Sohaib arrived in Canada with limited English, ready to pursue a business degree. Despite facing education systems that emphasize theory over practical skills, he navigated his way through over 10 jobs and the challenges of the COVID job market. Now a commercial insurance advisor at BrokerLink in Halifax, Shoaib also founded the Golden Method, where he shares unfiltered, no-nonsense career and business advice, just what we all need. His career journey includes roles at Newfold Digital, Scotiabank, and Roots, along with various positions at Dalhousie University. Sohaib's story is one of resilience and determination. He continually invests in his physical, mental, and spiritual growth, sharing his insights and experiences on LinkedIn. Join us now as we dive into the journey, exploring the lessons he's learned and the advice he has for others on navigating their own paths. Welcome, Sabi.
Hey Brian, how's it going?
Awesome. So glad you're here and can't wait to
Thank
dive
you.
into your story.
Thank you for
So,
having me. The pleasure is mine.
absolutely. So, before we get going, I would love to ask you like a few get to know you rapid fire questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. What is your superpower?
My superpower, see, that's a tough one. But I would say um, adapting to whatever circumstances I'm in.
That's a great
Like,
superpower.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's awesome. All right. Favorite smell?
favorite smell. That's definitely oud perfume. It's like an intensely fragrant oil
Okay.
extracted from tree resin, some tree. I actually don't know the details of it, but it's very intense, and I know here in Canada a lot of people are allergic to it. So I get the lighter ones.
Nice.
But this is my, oh god, I love it so much. I can
That
make another podcast about it, but
okay.
yeah,
Yeah, we could do that
it's
too. No,
amazing. Yeah,
but it's funny how smells as a sense, it brings out a lot of different things when you smell something. So I always like to hear it because people are like chocolate chip cookies or this or that or perfumes, whatever. That's awesome.
yeah.
If you had to think about the best compliment you've ever received, what would you say that is?
Oh, that's um I would say you're easy to work with. Whenever someone says that, because I got it a few times, it actually means a lot to me.
Yeah.
Because at some point in my life, I was a bit um, um, unfortunate with the managers or the people I worked with, and they were just really, really tough to work with. You know,
Mm.
people like they have different styles
Yep.
that you work with. We all have our own ways, but being a team player, being easy to work with, like kind of being understanding and flexible, I think that makes me really happy. As simple as it sounds, but just yeah,
No, that's
music to
great.
my ear.
That's
Yeah,
nice. It's a nice compliment to get. How about
yeah.
snacks? We all have a guilty pleasure or stuff we like to snack on. What's your snack?
Like the okay, it's not a guilty pleasure snacks
Okay.
because of the guilty pleasure one is ice cream, of course, Dairy Queen, Oreo, Blizzard. But if I'm gonna go with a snack that I can eat every day and not put on like
Yeah.
lots of pounds, it's dates and 90% dark chocolate, which is kind of a weird
Mm.
combination.
No, I get it. I love
Yeah,
dates. I think dates are like so understated. Like they're great.
yeah, and they're actually very good for you too.
Yeah.
Not just the taste, they're very, very good. And dark chocolate.
Nice. Yeah, dark
This
chocolate's
combo,
good.
ah, I'm done. I'm
You're making
sold.
me hungry. Maybe we should go get
Yeah.
some. Um, all right, so we all start somewhere with a first job. What was your very first job that you had?
Okay, so for my first job, I'm originally from North Africa, Egypt, right?
Hmm.
So most of the jobs I did over there, it was mostly volunteering. So I never got paid for
Yeah.
anything. It was more of a charity work. So my first proper job that I actually got paid for was here in Canada when I moved to university at Dalhousie. It was the the guest sign-in staff. I was just trying to recall the position, which is
Sure.
just a fancy name for a receptionist
Hmm.
um, on weekends. This was my first job.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome to know. If you
Yeah.
had to pick a word to describe yourself, what would you use?
Uh, that's a tougher one. Um, I would say we go through phases in life, right? So you can
We sure do.
it's very limiting to describe yourself in just one word. So I would say at this phase I'm in, a navigator. I kind of I went through, like I still do. I'm going through different like routes. I've
Yeah.
had like more jobs over the past few years and in different industries. I um, I learned a new language. I moved across like the other side of the world, so I'm kind of like I think of it as if I'm on a ship and I'm
Yeah.
just going to the land of the unknown. So yeah, a navigator would sum it up, I
I like
think.
that word, navigator. And it also it's great for this podcast to have that sense of mind because that's what I want to do now is jump into like tell us a little bit about you, like where it all started. I know you just talked about Turkey and Egypt, but take us back to kind of how you got started in life and a little bit of insights into your background.
How much time do we have? So anyone like listening to this, yeah, I hope you have a few minutes to spare, so you can hear all of that. So I'll try to be as brief and as engaging as possible. So it all started in 1997 in the north of Egypt.
Okay.
I was born over there. I went to school in Egypt. My mom is a housewife. My dad is a criminal lawyer. And of course, needless to say, the language of instruction in schools was Arabic. I was kind of the good, not so good kid
Yeah.
growing up. So I was kind of rebellious. I always like questioned the status quo. I didn't like how things were handled. I was definitely not the smartest at all, but I can tell I was a very curious kid with lots of friends in school. Like I kind of had the boys always on my good side. So I studied there until high school. High school, I wasn't like an A plus kid. I was more like in the middle.
Yeah.
But in Egypt, just to give you an idea how the education system works before university, you go through high school and you have three disciplines to choose from. You can either study like arts and history, a little bit of business, or you can start mathematics, or you can study science. It's mostly physics and
Okay.
chemistry. So I went through the arts and history, a little bit of economics, philosophy, and psychology. And in order to get into a good school, you have to get a very high grade. So it's over 90%. So I got into this mindset. I was like, okay, I want to see what I'm capable of in terms of academia because I've never like studied really, really hard. I still pass. I get an okay, like
Yep.
kind of grades, but I was never like the superstar,
Yep.
right? So I doubled down on this, and I remember I know like what can take a smart guy like 2 or 3 hours to study, it can take me 4, 5, even 6 hours, and I was totally fine with that. I was very self-conscious of it, so I put in the hours day in day out, and then I ended up getting 95%. So I was the top of my class. Then what happened is, okay, what am I gonna study? Because it was like a short-term solution for like a long-term problem that I'm gonna face. I don't have a clear goal, right? So I decided to go to the American University in Cairo, which is one of the pioneering schools like in the Middle East. But the thing is, I didn't have any English. I had the basics just for transparency. I knew like the
Yeah.
alphabets, I knew a few words. I like yeah, just the very very basic minimal English. But I don't know how to write academically. I don't know how to speak properly.
Wow.
I don't know how to listen. It was just kind of weird journey to begin with. So I was hesitant for a moment, but my family were like, "Oh, you don't have anything to lose. Just apply. They have an English exam, and you can take it from there." So I ended up applying. I was actually going to go to law school, but I ended up applying anyways, and I got the minimal like acceptance grade in the English exam. And fast moving forward, I started like taking English classes. I should have taken these classes for 1 year straight, but I got a very high grade on my first term, so I started my business classes right away,
Wow.
right? And 1 year after, that was 2017, 2018, I always dreamt of studying abroad. It was between Canada, UK, and US. Ended up choosing Canada for multitude of reasons. I can go about that on a different podcast. But yeah, I ended up choosing Canada. I got into Dalhousie. I came in. I still vividly remember my first day here in the country. It was at the midnight. I got lost for like 90 minutes outside trying to find a place to eat because it was just I didn't have any data on the phone, and I
Sure.
can't find anyone to ask because it's Atlantic Canada. It's not as vibrant as you guys in Toronto, right? We don't have a nightlife.
Well,
So-
I think to our conversation earlier, I think New York has the biggest nightlife, but
yeah,
that's,
but in a
in
Canadian context,
comparison. Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. You're right. Yeah,
So
it's
I
hard to
got
find people
there.
at midnight in Halifax for sure.
Exactly. Like now it's much better, I would say.
Yeah,
So I got in there, and I started taking my classes, and I actually struggled a lot. And the main barrier or the main obstacle in the way was language.
yeah,
And people often look at language and think like someone listening at them like, oh, it's just language. Get over it. You can just learn it and be fine. But no, because language usually means culture, right? Culture is
yeah,
not just um, some traditions or some. Um, it's not like a certain way of dressing. Culture, huge part of it is language, because language, when you boil it down, it's a way of communication. It's a way of expressing ideas. If you don't understand or know the language, you have no way to express yourself, so you will go unnoticed, right?
mm,
You will have really hard time like defining who you are, blending in. And it's just human nature. We want to feel like that we're part of the tribe,
right,
right? I want
right.
to feel like that sense of belonging. It's essential, like kind of human feeling. So that was the main thing. It took me the first two months, I would say. I would usually like hang out with people who speak my first language, but I found that really alarming, because I noticed that with international students, when they first arrive, they want to stay in the safe zone, right? They want to stay within their tribe or
Yeah,
within the people who actually deem safe,
right.
because they don't want to make mistakes. So the first step whenever someone talks to me and like, okay, how can I improve my English? I don't go about like, you know what, you should watch YouTube videos, you should go and public speak, you should go and do all of this and all of that. It's, first of all, this is unrealistic. The first thing they should do is to be okay being like, you know, making mistakes, I would say,
Yeah,
just to put it simply. Like, be totally fine butchering a few words, be totally fine making grammatical mistakes. You're not gonna die.
right,
No one is
right.
holding a gun to your head. Nothing's gonna happen, right?
No,
And yeah, I started like doing some extra curricular activities on campus, and I applied for jobs on and off campus. I can go into details the more we talk, because this, like, I can talk about that for a very long time. But yeah, I applied for jobs off campus for a reason, and I stayed on campus for a reason. Then I co-founded Dalhousie Egyptian Society with a group of my friends,
oh,
just to
that's awesome.
introduce the Egyptian culture to students in Dalhousie. We had one event, then COVID hit. Surprise, surprise. And yeah, we didn't do anything at the time till the new leadership team took over, and by that time I graduated. I worked in banking for a bit, software for a bit, and I worked in call centers. I even worked as a security bouncer for a while. And here I am now working in business insurance for one of the best brokerages in the country.
That's great.
And yeah, and I co-founded the business, like the Golden Method. Not co-founded, I founded. I'm the only owner actually, and I'm redefining it. By the way, I'm just having some like strategy brainstorming sessions with myself because I'm the only one. Just it's more of on the professional services side. So this is, yeah, a quick synopsis of what
Yeah.
I have been doing, and yeah,
Well,
there's a lot missing, but I try to be as brief and as
yeah,
I
no,
can.
no. We'll dig into it in some
Yeah,
of these upcoming
yeah,
questions for sure, because I want to talk about your career for sure. And you
yeah.
did talk about life as a newcomer and the experiences of the language. I would just tell you right now, listening to you speak, you wouldn't know that you face those obstacles because I think your speaking is incredible.
Thank you.
But I can only imagine because I myself came from US to Canada, which was no big deal because English was the language. So for me,
Yeah,
I didn't face
right.
those barriers. But coming also, I know you just talked about the language. Was there other things that also were some challenges as a newcomer in the country? Because I think of all the people listening to this that might be coming here now or just arrived and trying to figure out how to navigate. What were some of those challenges as well beyond the speaking? Was there others or?
Beyond the speaking, yeah, I would say finding a job when you're
Yeah,
struggling to speak the language.
perfect,
That's
right.
yeah, that's another thing. And yeah, these are the two. The third one, it's not directly related, like to coming to Canada. It's gonna be more of a byproduct of you like living in Canada, which is a lack of understanding of how basic the financial system works, like credit cards or debit cards. All of that, I think it's very, very important, and the sooner you understand it, the better it gets. Because I can tell you, Brian, like I knew some people for the first 2 years in Canada, they didn't know what a credit score is.
Yep.
So if you're planning on living in Canada, I'm not saying you, I'm not a, I'm not a finance expert or
No,
anything,
no,
but
it's a good point.
yeah, having the basics or knowing how the economy works, not the economy is a big word. I would say how personal finances work.
Yeah.
Just having a very basic idea I think is very important, and that of course includes the taxation system. I didn't file my tax in the first 2 years as
Yeah.
well. That's the thing, right? So I think people like they come in, they will just, you know what, I'm focusing on school. I have no time for this, and that. But hey, it will impact you at some point, right? It's not you're not gonna run away from. You're running away from the inevitable, right? At some point, you will get a
Well,
credit card and
yeah,
so
and
on.
it's
So
so interesting you bring it up because financial literacy for someone who's domestic is even a challenge I hear all the time from students and young people saying, for all my life, my parents balanced everything and I just, got money from them or whatever. And now you go off to school and you have to budget, work a job, figure out how you pay for things. And then you add on it the immigration of new processes, new ideas, new ways. I mean, that's
yeah,
that's something that really we've talked about this a lot in the school systems and with offices and businesses I've worked with is about the whole financial literacy conversation that needs to be happening because these are the life skills that you need to be successful outside of what you're doing, right, in the job itself. So very good
yeah,
point. Very good point. So
yeah,
career journey, let's talk. I know you've
yeah.
worked in a number of different jobs. You navigated the chaotic COVID job market, which was crazy in itself. Can you share some maybe lessons you learned from these variety of experiences and what you walked away with?
Mm, like what I walked away with, like in terms of living in Canada as like an international
Well,
graduate now, or
maybe the skills you walked away with, or something new you learned about working in these different types of opportunities.
yeah, that's I would say my belief in that nothing is permanent, meaning that with hardships there will be always ease. Like it's not gonna be bad all the time.
Yeah,
It's not. It can be, right? Because life is not is not always black. It's not always white. Sometimes it's in the gray. It's just, and you gotta like deal with it
Yeah.
like a dance. You know, it depends on what the music track you have on.
Yeah.
You just gotta adapt with it because I like sometimes it could be a bit of a tough love, as they say.
Yeah.
It's not your fault, but it's your responsibility. We can talk about it and we can like vent and rant and complain, which is totally fine. I think it's actually important to have someone to call or someone to meet, whether that's family, friend, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, and talk about what's going on and just doing something about it. But you sitting in the room, not dealing with anyone, turning a blind eye to whatever is going on is not going to solve your problem.
No. Mm-mm.
I remember, and during COVID, because my parents, they of course paid for my tuition fees because you know, Brian, more than me, how expensive
Yeah.
university
That's
tuition is for international students.
absolutely.
And if I don't get a job in 2 to 3 weeks, I I'm not gonna be able to pay rent. Like it's not gonna work out. I didn't know what to do. I was like panicking, but at the same time I cannot call my parents because this is one of the challenges that people don't talk about often too. With international students, a lot of the time they don't have the luxury to pick up the phone and call their parents or their family back home and let them know, hey, especially in a country like Canada, because Canada is so far. So my family, for instance, during COVID, even if they want to visit me, they're not going to be able to because everything is on a blockade, right? You
Right.
can't
Yeah.
just fly. Exactly. So you got to figure it out. You're on your own. So I called, like, my last resort. I called the manager that I worked with at Roots at the time. Old retail were closed.
Yeah.
And I told her, like, Angela, God bless her. Yeah. Um, I don't have a job. I need a job, like, urgently. So she referred me to the head of customer service at Roots at the time, and they were looking for someone for like with a for temporary contract for like 7 months because they now do like all the shopping or all their business online because
Yeah.
all the retail stores are closed. So I would just sign the contract for 7 months, and after that, I'm on my own. I'm like, perfect. I met the head of customer service for a quick interview, and we got everything done, and I started the job.
That's incredible.
If I stayed, yeah, had I stayed in that zone and be like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? I would have missed my rent, and God knows where I was gonna be at the time, right? It's just momentum. Momentum is everything. The Greek like philosophers talked about that a lot. I think Aristotle talked about this,
Hmm.
that life is in momentum, it's in movement, no matter how small or big it is. When you because for instance, when I tell people like it's going to the gym or having any sort of physical activity is important, I don't mean deadlifting 500 pounds
Right.
or like bench pressing 2 plates. It could be as simple as going on a 15-minute walk, right?
Yep.
Just being alive. When you're static, that's what the Greek talked about. You're dead when you're not doing anything,
Yeah.
right? It's not going to solve anything. This is the, I wish it could, but it's not, right?
No, it's super
Yeah.
insightful. And I think thank you for sharing and the rawness of it, because I think when other people listen to this and listen to the stories, they might be going right now and they're sitting in their room spinning, right? About what do I do?
Yep.
How do I do it? And I think your advice is spot on, and finding for them to find their Angela, right? Find that person that can open a door, can get something going for you, or maybe they know someone who knows someone else. Like generally those relationships are going to open up some of those doors. And I also like what you said about how, the hardships, and without having hardships, you don't know the ease of other things. And but when you're going through those minutes or those moments, it's like the world's going to end. There is light at that end of the tunnel. So thank you for sharing your story with that. I also wondered if maybe from an advice to others immigrating to Canada or international students who are just establishing themselves, obviously one is get understanding the financial literacy pieces. build out a network, I guess, to help you find jobs and opportunities. Any other advice or thoughts to international
Or
students who are just arriving in Canada and what may they think about?
I would say, because I see that a lot, it's very important to have a job off campus. Off campus. I'm just specific on that, and I'll tell you why. Most international students who emigrate to Canada, they plan at least to join the workforce for a bit, right? If you're staying always on campus, you're kind of dealing with people who are like on the same page as you, right? You're not exposed to the real consumers.
Yeah.
When you go outside, you get to understand consumer behavior, because when you look into economics, not just in Canada, anywhere, any economy, any economic model, the they do all the mathematics work, but they never take into consideration consumer behavior, because consumer behavior, it's not something that you can quantify. It's more of like personal observations. Oh, people are like into this, they kind of react in a certain way when this happens. This is the way they talk. This is how they prefer like dealing with conflicts. Because in certain cultures, for instance, in the East, dealing with conflicts is very different from dealing with conflicts in the West. And Malcolm Gladwell, the renowned Canadian
Hmm.
writer, was talking about that in his book. I believe it's Outliers.
Hmm.
um, I believe it was Outliers. He talked about that. They like people perceive leadership figures differently, right, in different cultures. So when you go and work off campus, that will give you a clear understanding of how the society operates, but in a realistic way. How the language they speak, because no one talks, trust me, no one talks in that Shakespearean English you hear in class and your economics. No one uses it anymore, right?
Right, right.
So yeah, and it will just give you that like school of life experience, because there is a graduation date on university certificates or bachelors, but there is no one provided on life experiences. You're never gonna get enough. You're never gonna be too good or too smart. You're always learning. Some
Love
people who
that.
you deem worthy, they're gonna be like not as honest as you might think, and vice versa.
Hmm.
There is no playbook on that. And I don't think, with all due respect, like I have friends like all over the country in different universities, in U of T, in Dalhousie, in Ottawa, in Carleton. And I visited Carleton University and U of T before as well. I don't think any university experience, at least the ones I've been to, will provide you with the same experience you have outside. And my proof for that is, whenever you talk to any student who graduated recently or even doing a co-op, the main comment will be, oh, university is not the same. Even if they work on campus, they didn't teach that. They didn't teach us this in school, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's a comment that I hear, oh my God, every time I talk to anyone. And the reason behind that is because they don't get enough off campus experience. And I would say, if you're going off campus, go for any sales or customer service jobs, even if you're in engineering or in
Smart.
computer science.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Super smart.
because that's another thing. People with automation, I'm a big fan of generative AI. I'm a big tech guy. But when you have something that's very, 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 very saturated and people are focusing on, which is getting proficient with using technologies, you get the basic skills. Like, it's kind of an inverse relationship.
Yeah.
People are really good at using their phones and screens, but the old school way of dealing with each other, of like talking, they're like they can't do anymore, right?
Yeah.
And I'm talking about my generation and the younger one,
Yep.
and I'm still in the 20s. So I think it's very, very important to get really, really good at the basics, sales and customer service, whether that's on the phone or working in a store or being a server.
Yeah.
That will teach you, in my opinion, more than working in like a leading bank in the country or something and doing like a back end job.
I love your advice and thoughts on this. I think it's got a lot of merit to it. It
Yeah.
goes back to like going out of your boundaries of, you get to the campus, you don't want to like insulate there, right? And work just there. I think your
Yeah,
idea of pushing yourself, everything sales and marketing, I think is something everyone should go through because it's how you learn how to speak and talk with people and deal with conflict with different in a different way than the classroom. Yeah, I think your advice is super on that. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. I think it's some really good ideas. Really good
yeah.
ideas.
And
Um,
I would add one more thing, if you
yeah,
don't mind.
yeah, sure.
It's just taking care of yourself, like physically, mentally, spiritually, and physically. Again, like you don't have to deadlift like 500 pounds. Don't squat. It's very simple. Just do anything. Go for a walk.
Can you
It will.
deadlift 500 pounds?
I can.
I
I-
figured. I figured because you're like one of my friends who talks about working out and everything, and he's like
yeah,
lifts like 1,000 pounds. I'm like, yeah, but you can do it.
yeah,
So, but anyways, no, I get what you're saying because I wanted to ask you
yeah.
about that because self-improvement, beyond just education comes in a lot of like you're talking about it now, so you might as well jump to that. Like the whole idea of like bettering yourself and thinking about personal professional growth. It's not just mind, it's physical, mind, body, everything, right?
Yeah, they go hand in hand. And for the mental, it could be like a phone call to your
Yeah.
family every day. It could be to your friends. It could be to a stranger, actually, someone you met at the park and you strike a conversation with, and as simple as that. For spirituality, I know some people like they're not religious, which is fine, but I find the stoicism for I'm a very big fan of stoicism, really helpful. Or you can meditate. I've never tried it, but some people swear by it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Find
so
what
that
works for you, right? And
find what works for you exactly. Like ignore all the gurus you hear on social media saying that you have to sleep 4 hours and like drink 12 cups of coffee and never call your parents because you're super busy and all of that. No, what if you get productive, sleeping 12 hours and getting a small bag of Doritos even though I don't recommend it eating it every day. But anyhow, if that makes you productive and you
yeah.
don't like overuse it, of course, man, go for it. Do your
Yep.
thing. Don't
No,
listen to anyone because no one lived your journey and no one will ever live like your life. And
that's
yeah,
right. And that's what's important. That's why on this podcast I love for guests like yourself to
exactly.
talk about that. Thank you for sharing that
Yeah.
because too often we see a prescribed life or a prescribed way of doing things and that's not for everybody. And sometimes you need to really get in your own head and think about what is it that you want, not what everyone
Yeah,
else wants. What it's your life, right? So,
right.
I wanted to ask you about mentorship and guidance. Like,
Sure.
I know in Canada and North America as well, mentorship, networking. I really have started talking about networking more as connecting because networking sometimes gets like it's too robotic, but connecting with people, mentorship, things like that. How have you found that in your journey and helped you through things that you've gone through? And I also, because I don't know the environment you came from, if mentoring and networking stuff was something that you did back in Egypt and Turkey and
No,
things.
it I didn't have like of course my main role models in my life, they're my parents,
Yeah, of course.
my mom and my dad. But networking, no, it wasn't a thing, honestly, because I left like at a very young age,
That's
right?
true. That's true.
And at the time, even when I went to school in Egypt at American University in Cairo, I was struggling because it was mostly people who speak English as well. And it was a very kind of new thing to me. Funny enough, I couldn't actually read the emails that they sent out to me. Like on the first 2 months, I can understand, like, oh, I would get someone whose English is much better than me. I'm like, yo, man, how can I read that? Like, or not read it. Is she trying to say, the English teacher at the time? So for mentorship, this is actually something that I really really struggled with because my dad is a criminal lawyer, so his field is way 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 outside of what I do.
Right.
And same for the rest of my extended family. They're mostly like doctors, lawyers, or in the army, with their own like private practices. So I didn't get any back home. So even here, when I came, I still kind of struggle with that, to be honest with you, till that day. I
Yeah.
can't find. like a mentor. So what I do instead is I have two libraries that I access that are like full of mentors. I can't see them, but I can kind of read or try to do what they tell me to do, and do it in my own way. This is YouTube and books. So I rely heavily, heavily, heavily on that. I try to read as much as I can,
Hmm.
even though I'm not as active as I want to be right now, given how busy life gets sometimes. So I depend on books and on YouTube, and lastly is the people I meet. So Brian, after I finish that conversation with you, I'm just, you know, I'll be learning one thing or two. Actually, I already learned something. Within 5 to 7 minutes, you built like rapport with me as
Yeah.
if we know each other like for years. That's something that I try to get good at. So
Yep.
you kind of like gave me an idea how it looks like in real life, and you're doing it authentically, right?
Huh, thank you.
Yeah. So this is something that, yeah, I'm learning from you right now.
Yeah.
It's literally with everyone I see, everyone, no matter how much we disagree, I learn something from, and not just in at work or in a professional context. It could be like in personal relationships, like that. Even if I get into a bad relationship or I got into a bad experience with anyone, I'll be like, okay, let's put aside who the villain is and who is the angel. Let's zoom out and see what I can learn from that.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're not going to learn everything, and you're not going to understand what's going on, and that's fine. Sometimes you just got to leave it to fate, and it happened, and you will understand why it happened at some point down the road. So these are the three things I depend on. It's meeting people,
Yep.
uh, that literally nothing without like connecting or anything. It could be just someone I met at a cafe and
Yep.
we have a random conversation, or books and YouTube, just watching podcasts, or people talking.
Yep. Awesome. No, it's great. You know, I wanted to, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about your
Yeah.
business because we didn't really
Yeah.
talk much about, do you want to talk a little bit
Well,
about, or you want to,
yeah. No, no, it's all good. The golden method, like I'm kind of putting it on hold now to
sure,
be just for transparency with everyone. It was
that's fine.
actually, it started as it's a professional services company. It was going to offer like professional coaching, how to navigate interviews,
Yep.
how to stand out in such a saturated market, and so on and so forth. But I needed to work on my offer and be more specific. So I kind of like taking a step back
Sure.
and re redefining the strategy. So the reason I chose the golden method, just to let everyone know, I was actually okay. But the term gold, you have different kinds of golds. You have the 14K, the 18K, the 21, I think, and the 24. So I was thinking of it like, okay, you're like someone who wants to work in a company or start your own business. I try and make you as valuable as gold, because no matter where gold goes, like a golden bar or a gold bar in Egypt, Brian, will be as expensive as a gold bar in downtown Toronto or in
Okay.
Florida in
Yeah.
US
Yeah.
or in India or anywhere.
That's
So
right.
I kind of creating that golden persona for people that whenever you go, if you work in insurance, if you work in software, if you work in AI, if you work in data analytics, whatever you work in, you're going to be valuable, and you're actually going to be the most valuable. So this is where the name came from, the golden
Gotcha.
method. So given the methods I teach you, you will get there.
That's awesome. Well,
Yeah.
maybe I'll have you back. We can talk about what
Yeah.
happens with that.
Yeah.
And given where I am starting my own business, I think you and I have a lot to talk about offline after this podcast anyways.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think we're going to
Fair.
be long lost friends when it comes to navigating this
My
world of
pleasure.
so um wanted as there it's awesome talking to you. I've learned so much and so much great insights for the listeners too. Is there anything that we didn't get to that you maybe wanted to cover or talk about before we consider wrapping it up?
um No, I
Think you
wouldn't
hit it?
say so. No. I think the if you're listening to this podcast and you're still like not in Canada yet, you're planning on coming over, make sure you get a double double at the airport once you land. Just you might not know what a double double is, but man, once you get that double double, you're officially a Canadian. That's it. That's
That's great. I love
it.
that. I love that plug. Oh man. Well, it's been such a pleasure getting to know you more, hearing your story, your inspiration, and the things you've worked through, and where you are already in life. I mean, congratulations to what you're doing, and even for our listeners, you can follow Sohaib on LinkedIn, see some of the stuff he's talking about. It's fantastic. I think he's got some great insights and ideas, and so thank you so much for being part of the podcast.
Absolutely, Brian. My pleasure. And one last thing, if you guys like when you get to my profile on LinkedIn, feel free to message me if you have any questions. We can even jump on a call and I'll be happy to answer any of your questions or have a nice coffee chat.
That's
Thank you,
awesome.
Brian.
Thank you for that.
Thank
And
you.
so for the audience, if you like what you heard today, please share this podcast on Spotify with your friends. You can also follow us on Instagram. It's Coffee with Convery on Instagram. This has been Coffee with Convery, and until next time, please stay well.